Hello there. Thank you for staying with us and welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I am Victor Matthias. Now, on Friday, 4th of June, the Minister for Information, Lai Mohammed, announced an indefinite suspension of Twitter's services in Nigeria in response to what he called the persistent use of the platform for activities that are capable of undermining Nigeria's corporate existence. This drew the ire of many Nigerians home and abroad, including foreign missions in the country. However, some Nigerians believe the measure taken by the federal government was instructive. Now, this situation also brought back conversations over whether or not social media should be regulated in Nigeria, and this will be our focus on the program today. But before we get to all of that, let's quickly refresh your minds with a timeline of events that took place before we got to where we are today. Now, on June the 2nd, Twitter deleted President Muhammadu Buhari's tweet. On June the 4th, the federal government suspended Twitter operations in Nigeria. On the same day, SERAP, Amnesty International, the PDP, the NBA all kicked against the suspension of the platform. And the NBA also threatened a lawsuit against the federal government if the suspension is not rescinded. On June the 5th, the suspension of Twitter took effect while users were unable to access the platform. On the same day, the Attorney General of the Federation ordered the prosecution of those found violating the ban. On the same day, Twitter reacted to the suspension and expressed deep concern. On June the 6th, Canada, UK, the EU, the US, Norway, and Ireland released a joint statement kicking against the suspension, and the House of Reps PDP caucus threatened a legal action against the federal government if a U-turn isn't made. On June the 7th, the NBC directed broadcasters to stop using Twitter as a source for user-generated content, and also the federal government, on the same day, that's today, summoned the consular generals or the representatives of the governments of the UK, the US, the EU, Norway, Ireland, and all of those who were kicking against that. But we're now joined by Ibukun Adeniyi. He is an IT expert and founder of Hack Academy, a coding academy that helps build careers in technology. We also have with us Gbenga Sheson. He is the executive director of Paradigm Initiative, a Pan-African social enterprise working on digital inclusion and digital rights. He joins us via Zoom. We also have a global Malala Fund education champion working to accelerate girls' education in Northeast Nigeria and the CEO of Connected Development in our Abuja studio, Hamzat Lawal. And also in our Abuja studio, we have Michael Uluwagbemi. He is a public commentator and a senior partner at Hannibal and Artetark. It's a pleasure to have all of you today join us on the program. But Ibukun, let me kickstart this conversation, or you kickstart this conversation for us. What is the impact of this ban as it is?
In my opinion, from the time of President Jonathan, I've learned something. The enemy of my enemy is not always my friend, right? I understand that a lot of Nigerians are sentimental towards Twitter because of the financial value, entertainment value that it provides to the every Nigerian. But we must also realize that Twitter is a public forum. It's not a platform, for instance, like Channels Television. Channels Television is liable for every content that they put on air. But Twitter isn't. So, for instance, if somebody plans an armed robbery using Twitter, nobody can go and meet Twitter or arrest Twitter for what was done on the platform, right? So Twitter has a form of immunity that they've enjoyed. But over the past few years, Twitter has begun to pick sides on social issues, right? An example of it is even in their own country, they took a side on the American elections, and they were always, it always seemed like they were against the then President Trump. And even at a stage, they blocked the sitting president from being able to communicate. And that is a power that usually in the world, is almost unheard of. And this is a power that this company holds. So what are they doing with this power? How much accountability can government hold of Twitter? So what is going on now?
Let me bring in Gbenga Sheson to answer some of these questions, that you just asked. Gbenga Sheson is joining us via Zoom from Lagos. Gbenga, again, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Of course, I'm sure you must have heard Mr. Adeniyi is, talking about the power that a big tech company like Twitter holds. But in your own estimation, how do you think this ban, or this suspension, and the powers that they allegedly have. How do you think this is affecting the everyday life of Nigerian as it is at the moment?
Thank you, Victor, for having me. And I think we need to understand that some two fundamental issues at the heart of this ongoing debate. And I think it's important for me from the beginning to say this is not about Twitter ban. This is about social media regulation. As we've now seen, the NBC has now released a statement that touches on the right of broadcasters to choose platforms where they will get their sources from. There are two issues. One is the issue of content moderation, which was spoken to a bit earlier, and the other issue is the issue of human rights. On the issue of content moderation, there is a global conversation about regulation. By the way, I should say, even though Nigeria seems to have adopted the meaning of regulation to be control, the real meaning of regulation is to create standards between various stakeholders. We have this conversation going on between the state on one end, countries, and platforms. The reason for that is because we've seen our some states, to be honest, are bigger in size and revenue than some countries. But the people that we elected are the states. So definitely we have these challenges of disinformation or fake news, as some would want to call it, or dangerous speech and hate speech. And the conversation is going on. But actions taken around this issue cannot, but conform to three things. Number one, it must be legal.
Okay.
Number two, it must be proportional. And number three, it must be necessary. But of course, what Nigeria has done now is to take the anti-democratic approach to to this issue, and that is why we're speaking clearly that Nigeria has taken the wrong step.
All right, let me just hold you there for a bit. I'll come back to you on some of the things that you made mention of, but let me quickly touch our Abuja studio, where we have Michael Uwagwemi as well as Hamzat Lawal. But Michael, do you agree that the space as it is now needs regulation?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
And I welcome, I thank all our guests, co-guests with me on the show today. Absolutely. Anything that can cause harm requires regulation. Under the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, in Part 2, second schedule, Part 1, it lists all the exclusive legislative rights of the Nigerian legislature, and one of those is the regulation of commerce, especially commerce between Nigeria and other countries. It also listed as number 62. It's also listed in number 66, the right to regulate broadcasting. My friend and brother, Gbenga Sheson, had suggested before I convinced him to come on the Nigerian platform called Channels TV, that we should have this conversation on Twitter Spaces. And I said, no, I'm not going to have the conversation on
Mr. Michael, let's move forward. I mean, let's get to the crux of the matter. I mean,
yeah, I was just going to draw a straight analogy to say that Twitter Spaces is an alternative broadcast platform, and so therefore, under number 66 of the Constitution, Part 2, second schedule, Part 1, number 66, it should fall under the regulatory purview of the Nigerian legislature. So therefore, if you have established that a particular tool or a particular platform or anything whatsoever within the economy of a country or a nation or a society can cause harm, as we've already established. For one, people go on social media, get abused. People go on social media, get bullied. In fact, the FIFA, as well as the EU football body, have been getting people arrested for abusing footballers on social media. People actually go on social media and commit suicide because of what that has happened to them on social media. Is there any private business in Nigeria that is operating in Nigeria today that is outside the purviews of regulation? Why is Channels TV, that is a broadcast platform, subject to regulation and Twitter is not? Why is a newspaper, a radio station subject to regulation and Twitter is not? Twitter can get dangerous content to my children. And if under the fundamental objectives of the Nigerian state, Part B, 16B, says very clearly that the primary reason why the Nigerian state exists is for the security of lives and the welfare of our citizens, then the life of my kids to ensure that they are not bullied, the life of any individual to ensure they don't commit suicide, the properties of Nigerians to ensure that fake news, false information, does not lead to the destruction, the kind of wanton destructions we witness, the killing of policemen, the destruction of INEC offices that is now going on in the eastern part of Nigeria. So, for example, on Twitter, IPOB, a proscribed organization by the Federal High Court of Nigeria, a court in Nigeria, the third arm of government, have said this organization is a terrorist organization, has over 20 handles. Can Al-Qaeda have an handle on Twitter? No. But I still have it on record that IPOB has handles on Twitter as we speak.
All right, let me quickly
I still have it on record that people are calling for the death and the killing of Nigeria's president just yesterday, and it's still on Twitter.
All right, let me hold you for a bit. Let me hold you for a bit, Michael. I mean, as you make those statements, let's also quickly hear from Hamzat Lawal, who is just sitting by your side. Hamzat is a rights activist, digital as well, and also human rights activist as well. Hamzat, Mr. Oluwagbemi is justifying the suspension of Twitter and also the regulation of social media in Nigeria. But one of the things that has come up is the fact that by the suspension of Twitter is people say, or it is actually one of the UN charters, that it is a violation of the human rights to access information, impart knowledge and do business and all of that. So how do you react to his statements at the moment?
I think we need to be careful. This is a democracy who have elected a democratically government. And here we are debating issues that are taking us away from what currently affects us. And I like the fact that my brother here talked about safety and security. Is it Twitter that is causing the insecurity across the country? Children have been kidnapped. But that being said, as a democracy, the Minister for Information came out with a policy that looks like a decree that is meant under a military regime. Today, our government is trying to gag social media because of the criticism that citizens are in their voice that they want to enjoy the dividends of democracy and good governance. So you're shutting down Twitter. Now you've shut down Twitter. Are you ensuring that the over 50% unemployment rate have reduced? I think we should focus more on the issues that affect everyday Nigeria. Today, businesses are losing income because of the fact that government have gagged Twitter. If you look at all of this, what is the root cause? So Mr. President's tweet was brought down by Twitter. Mind you, Twitter is a community of citizens who saw Mr. President's statement as an incitement and then reported it to a machine. If you understand technology, there's an algorithm that checkmates what people are reporting and then brought down this tweet. Mind you, if the government have an issue with Twitter, as a democratically elected government, there's always room for dialogue. And for me, when the Minister of Information, brought out that policy, you cannot single-handedly put a ban on telcos to restrict citizens from sharing information and engaging. Did our executive had a dialogue with our legislators before this came to be? For me, I am really worried. I'm worried because, again, our judiciary is currently on strike. So right now, what we have in Nigeria is absolute power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Right now, we're being gagged. Citizens cannot air their grievances. They cannot air their views. Let me even give one quick positive example of Twitter. When a colleague was kidnapped, a citizen was kidnapped in Akwa Ibom State, platform users were the ones who helped track her last location and got police, supporting police to investigate and catch the perpetrators. Again, Twitter is a platform. And I can go on and tell positive stories of how we've reduced numbers of adult school children, how we've held government to account in tracking public resources.
Let me just hold you there for a moment. We need to take a quick break, and when we come back, of course, we'll just, of course, get back to the conversation. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have with us our panelists in our Lagos, Abuja studios, as well as via Zoom. Let me quickly go back to Zoom, where we have Gbenga Sheson standing by. Gbenga, one of the things you talked about, was how this process was taken. Would you have preferred if a different approach was followed?
Unfortunately, I couldn't hear what the Abuja studios was saying. But in direct answer to your question, I think the approach that was taken is illegal and undemocratic, very clearly. And I say that because, first of all, this is not just an action taken about Twitter alone. This is an action that is consistent with some of the undemocratic practices of this administration. Before now, we are seeing bills that have been sponsored and policy statements from people like the information minister asking for Nigeria to go the way of China, which is odd when you begin to say that a
So, so,
democratic
so
country
let,
should.
let me, Benga, let me just quickly cite one of the things that one of the speakers from the Abuja studio said. He talked about, that was Michael Lulu Agbemi here. He talked about how if, broadcast stations in this country are under the restrictions or maybe the supervision of a regulator, why then shouldn't Twitter space or Twitter itself as a platform shouldn't be under supervision?
So, like I said earlier, two problems. Number one, when the Nigerian government begins to have a regulation conversation, it is not talking about creating standards. It is talking about control. And you can see that from the statement that was released by the Attorney General declaring illegal something that has not been tagged illegal by Nigerian laws. And I believe you should know better. You have now seen what the NBC has said, dictating to broadcasters how and where they can get their sources from. So clearly, when the Nigerian government is talking about regulation, they're not talking about creating standards, they're talking about control, which is basically to keep people who dissenting opinions quiet. That's one. The second thing is there is a track record here. I said earlier, is this legal? This action by the government. A memo was sent to telecom companies. Which law is that? So, if you say that telecom companies should shut down in the name of national security, where is the court warrant that you got? According to your own laws, I'm quoting the Nigerian laws now. According to your own law, where is the court warrant that you used to get that? Second thing is it must be proportionate. Is it proportionate to cut your nose, to spite your own face? The
All right.
government is the only person that is missing right now. Some businesses are missing. People are still tweeting because they're using VPNs. And this is absolutely unnecessary.
All right, let me quickly go to the Abuja studio. Let me quickly also hear from Michael Uluagbemi. Michael, now looking at the law, looking at how the process, the procedure that was followed, to enforce the suspension or the ban, as it has been called, what do you think about that? Do you think that a different approach should have been followed, or the approach that was followed was correct?
Yeah, I think matters got to a head. I think the administration had been tolerating for far too long and probably decided to act in national interest. Albeit, I do not believe they acted illegally. Again, I think the problem with a lot of us is that we want to take a shortcut to democracy. Democracy has three arms of government. You have the executive, you have the legislature, and you have the judiciary. And there's a law here, which was passed by the legislature. It's called the National Broadcasting Commission Act, part of the Nigerian laws of 2004. And that law stated very clearly in Section 2, number 2 and 3, that the National Broadcasting Commission has a right to regulate media broadcasting in all electronic platforms, including any other form of platform where you can do broadcasting. And this, we have already established that Twitter does broadcasting, because we could have easily had this conversation on Twitter. And then it now went further in Section 6 of the same act to say that the minister has the right to direct the NBC to take action on specific matters. So when you now come here and say that it is illegal, when did you become a court? The third arm of government is the judiciary. Go to court if you want to enforce your fundamental human rights. And it is true that part of the judiciary is on strike, but the truth is that every federal judicial high court in Nigeria today is still taking anything that has to do with your fundamental human rights. So I don't believe, but we cannot come here and just be making statements that is not based on the law. I've quoted the law, I've quoted the Constitution, I have quoted everything on this station. I think it is only right that we should practice democracy.
All right, let me quickly bring in Hamzat, who is also just sitting beside you. Hamzat, now looking at the law arm, the law part of this thing, Michael is saying that the law, as it is now, has given the federal government the backing to do what it did. But in your own estimation, what do you think? Quickly, as we
This
wind
is
down.
not democracy. This is not democracy. If the federal government wanted to do this, they should have actually consulted with our legislators at the National Assembly. Did they sit down with principal officers before they came about this ban? So for me, this is not democracy. The fact that you're not comfortable with what people are saying, people who elected you legitimately, does that mean you should shut them up? This is about access to information and information sharing. You cannot, and of course, we've seen instances where this government of the day have come up with different avenues to gag the media and the social media. Today it's Twitter, tomorrow it might be Facebook, next tomorrow maybe they will come for all the broadcasting station and say, oh, let's shut all of you down.
Well,
Come on.
let's
If we want to practice democracy, let us practice it and stop gagging the voices of citizens. If they had an issue with the platform, again, this is a democracy. They can have a dialogue and set standard and then rally around users. If you want to tackle the issues that Nigeria are facing and with the mistrust, you need the people on that platform, both online and offline, to help the government achieve its aim and objective. But this is definitely not democracy. And mind you, what law does the Minister of Justice, who is saying that he's going to prosecute people, under what law? Is it under the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Because it is criminal for you to criminalize what is not on the law. And mind you, that's why we always advocate we need to separate the office of the minister and that of the Attorney General of the Federation. The Attorney General is meant to be the custodian of the law and the enforcer of the rule of law.
This will be a good note, to hold it. I have to say thank you to you, Hamzat. Thank you to you, Oluwagbemi, Michael, as in our Abuja studios, as well as Benga Sheson joining us via Zoom. But Ibukun, quickly wrap this conversation for us. So the issue of the law has been bandied up and down, but in 30 seconds, what's your take on that?
I'm upset with the president as much as any Nigerian that is out there on how he uses the hammer approach to handle every situation. But my own message is to the ordinary Nigerians. We cannot keep pouring petrol on ourselves every time we are upset with the president. We need to understand these issues. We are still lucky that we are still in a democracy. We need to learn how to play the democracy, and we need to learn how to win. On this IPOB issue, Twitter has no right to pick sides.
Thank you very much, Ibukun Adeni, for your own thoughts as well on the program. Well, that's where we are. We've heard it's been a potpourri of opinion on this very touchy issue. But that's where we'll wrap it up today on the program. Of course, you can still watch it again on our YouTube channel. It's www.youtube.com. Thanks for watching again. I'm Victor Matthias.